everyone. Welcome. My name is Vili Xeni, and I'm the Commissioning and Engineering Director for MySim. And we're very happy to be here today, and I have
It's loud.
we have a very stimulating discussion to offer to you. Sorry about me being a bit nervous. So before we start with the introductions of my esteemed panelists, I wanted to start with a premise. Women in data centers, it's not something groundbreaking anymore. It's normal, it's happening, and if you're not doing it, you're probably a bit left behind. So what are we here to discuss today? To basically analyze what we collectively are not doing yet, and how do we change that to get to parity. So please welcome our panelists, Suzanne, Lizzie, Katrona, Rebecca, and Eve. And I will hand it over to yourselves to introduce yourselves, your role in your companies, and very briefly say how you found yourselves into this fabulous ecosystem. Over to you.
Okay. Hello, I'm Suzanne Cockaday. I'm a Vice President of Core Infrastructure and Z Cloud for Kyndryl UK and Ireland. I found myself into the data centers really through the business case route about looking at what the business cases for our data center strategy would be when we were part of IBM. So I was responsible for a lot of the IBM's data center strategy and then executing it. And then when we were spun out of IBM, I was responsible for fitting out a load of two data centers here in the UK.
Amazing. Thank you, Suzanne. Lizzie?
So hi, everybody. My name is Lizzie, and I'm the Director of Marketing for Kao Data. Kao Data design, build, and operate data centers engineered for AI. And I found myself in this industry completely randomly. I was supposed to be an actress, so I feel like I should do a dance routine right now with this microphone on my face. But it's just because I simply didn't know it existed. I would have chosen it in a heartbeat if I did. And that's why I founded an initiative called Critical Careers, a celebration of women in digital infrastructure. So nice to be here.
Thank you, Lizzie. And Katrona?
Hello, I'm the Katrona Shearer, the Global Head of Data Center Consulting at JLL. Like a lot of people, I accidentally fell into the industry. I was self-employed during COVID, not fun. And a friend of mine said that there was an account that needed some help, and would I like to do it? Yes, absolutely right. Didn't even ask what it was for, and turned out it was a data center. So the first day I stepped foot in a data center, they handed me the keys and were like, this is yours now. Brilliant.
Thank you so much. And Rebecca?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Weekly. I run infrastructure engineering for GEICO. Before that, I ran infrastructure engineering for Cloudflare. I'm in the operator side of data centers as opposed to building them. I came to data centers from semiconductor design, development, systems design and development, and became the OCP chairperson, which is the Open Compute Project. And that's really when we started to look at the physical facilities, power infrastructure, how we could standardize that to make data centers more reusable and more programmable.
Thank you, and thank you for flying from the US to be here.
Rocked hard.
And last but not least, Eve?
Thank you. So I'm Eve McElvaney. I work for Yondr Group, who build, own, and operate data centers designed for AI. I've been in the industry about 10 years, VP of Global Procurement right now, and how did I get into it? Well, I fell into it, let's say. I was match-made to a manager at the time. He hired me, unfortunately for him, and I loved the industry, didn't know what it was. Mind was completely blown, and still here 10 years later.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So let's start by setting the scene. We have discussed in our prep chats about the huge change that the data center industry is seeing at the moment, especially with AI, and the scale and the pace that things are happening at. So before we talk about leadership and inclusion, I wanted to start with the industry itself. And the question is, can we afford to continue on a pattern of underappreciation and underutilization of pretty much half of the population? And maybe I'll just pass this on to Katrona to get started.
It's a bit of a pet topic, so you may have to stop me rather than start me. To the premise of the panel, yes, exactly like you said, if you're not already making room for diverse people in your workforce, you're losing out on a significant amount of the workforce. So it's not even a diversity wins conversation, it's pure maths at this point. You don't have enough people, competency isn't associated to gender or race or color, it is associated to competency. So if you're ruling out huge swathes of the population based on whether you believe they're going to be competent or not, you're making a gigantic mistake. Now I think that's become quite clear over the last few years in terms of the intellectual agreement to it. What I believe is missing is the how. So turning something you know is true into reality is way more difficult than accepting that it's true in the first place, and I think that's where our focus should be.
And I know that, Rebecca, obviously you're on the forefront of AI deployment as an end user. What would you see into the same pattern of underappreciation? Can we afford to do it?
It's very hard to look at any problem and limit yourself by design in your constraint space. If you want to solve real problems, you have to take a step back and be willing to look at every opportunity. And I think to Catriona's point, 50%, 51% of the population is female. We all are of different race, background, creed, color. Why would you ever want to approach solving problems from a singular point? And when we look at end user design and development, particularly domains that I work in, the people who are making decisions are often women when we're purchasing insurance for the family, what we're trying to accomplish. So when we don't design our products thinking through our own consumer base, we're never going to design ideally for outcomes. That's true in how cars were originally developed, and it's true in how we sell insurance to them now. You continue to need to understand the diverse patterns that people will consume your products through, and the outcomes correlated with best revenue are diverse teams. They tend to look at problems from different lenses, different contexts, different background, and you get to better outcomes. So why would you not want to use that to solve your problems?
Yeah, absolutely. And there have been plenty of examples around the industry where this is actually happening and people are just starting to see it. Mm-hmm. And Suzanne, you had a very interesting point about that when we call it the data center industry, this is a very narrow definition, and it's more of an ecosystem. So in an ecosystem, does everybody stay in their swim lanes, or do they mingle?
Yeah. Building on your point, it is about that ecosystem, and if we are going to deliver the right outcomes for our end customers and the ultimate end customers, we need to have that ecosystem working really well with no friction, and that needs to avoid any ideas around groupthink and for everything to work harmoniously, and that can be everything from the support services in the data center all the way through to the ultimate purchaser or the end user. And that ecosystem has to be looked at in its entirety in a very holistic manner.
Great. So I think I want to move talking about shortage of opportunity. So, do we think at this moment in time there is enough? We're making enough space for women for that next stage of the data center ecosystem? And are there any examples that you have come across of how we can support better and make it more universal, maybe applicable to all humans, not just women? And I will pass it on to Eve to start.
Thank you, Billy. So. I think my view on this, or the question that I would ask myself is, ask myself and you in the room actually, is are we making space for women at every stage of their career? Because we do see there's a lot of women in the audience today, there's a lot of capable women up here, but how do they get into the industry, and then how do they move through the industry as well? So we need to make that space right at the beginning. We need to be conscious in our own teams that we're making that space, but we also need to have the right people in our teams as well. So diversity is important. It's not just about women, but it's about bringing that balance. The problem that we have right now is we don't have that space at every step. So when I look to my next step, there's not that many women in the C-suite. There really aren't in our industry. It's coming through, but do we have enough coming behind us to enable the choice and having lots of capable females that are ready for that next step? So we need to go back to the beginning, I would say. And I heard a great speech from Reese Witherspoon, and it was a long time ago, so completely unrelated, but the film industry was very male-dominated. And she was just getting parts that were very typical for a typical woman. Woman chases man, woman fights with other women over man. And she decided to take agency, and she said, I'm not accepting any roles like that anymore. And they said, but you won't get any lead roles. And she said, well, I'll accept that. And then she came on to produce her own movies that had strong female leads. It's a good example, and it is relevant, that we need to take agency and we need to drive the change.
Yep. And Lizzie, do you want to share your thoughts on this?
I mean, Eve has summarized it perfectly, but it is totally about visibility. People identify with people that they can relate to. And that was one of the main motivations behind the whole Critical Careers initiative, because often we are profiled in top 100 lists, really very, rightfully so, but also if you are at a junior stage or considering a career change, it's difficult to relate. I didn't know this industry existed. I love it, but if I couldn't have related to really senior women in that space because I didn't think there was a chance for me to, I'm not from a technical background, I couldn't have related. So I think it's about visibility. It's seeing senior leaders who are women in those roles and identifying with them and realizing that you can be ambitious. It's not a dirty word, and claiming that and owning that. So yeah, for me, it's about visibility.
Amazing, thank you. And Catriona, do you have any examples of redesigning roles, changing shift patterns, for example, to create a more balanced team from your experience?
Yeah, so I've definitely got experience of recalibrating a technical role based on a return to work following maternity leave. But I guess, so I'll talk about that in a sec, but overarching that is the only reason that was able to be done or even considered was because the management group that looked at it was female. So that return to work until that female management group looked at that problem was seen to be impossible. We'll just have to put her in a different job. It's not the end of the world. I mean, she was quite good and all, but it's fine. She'll be fine. And until a female group said, no, that's not appropriate. Let's take a proper look at that. It was only at that moment that got recarved. Now, the point isn't that there was a failure. The point is it often takes someone who understands what the root of the problem is and that there is a different way to solve it, whoever that person is. They don't have to be female, of course, but if you can bring yourself round to that perspective, solving that problem becomes possible. So in the example, at a technical supervisor, a very talented technical supervisor, fell pregnant unexpectedly as it happened. All very happy, everybody very healthy. In order to return her to work appropriately, we agreed with the business in advance of her maternity leave what her return to work could look like. So it agreed the parameters for how her job might work if she had 1 day a week in the office. If she only worked 1 day a week, if she had 3 days a week from home, what would that look like? And we were able to carve up the tasks that she could return to in that phase on a spectrum. And it was no hassle. It was easy because she wasn't going to be in role for the 9 to 12 months ahead of her return. So those tasks had been carved up and were being done by other people. So what we were really talking about was a handing back of those tasks in a phased way. Now, she was a technical leader, still is, high-performing technical leader. A lot of her tasks could be done without touching equipment. And that's true of most roles. What it really takes is a level of perspective and effort and some creative thinking to work backwards through a problem.
Yeah, and it actually takes the people to want to do that effort.
Yes.
To have to be willing.
Back to the how.
Yes,
how are we going to do
exactly.
it?
Yeah. And Rebecca, from your experience with a more challenging environment in the US, have you seen that effort being made in a live technical environment instead of just on paper?
I don't know that it's more challenging in the US or not. I won't speculate. We have to look, and I actually would say in the AI world, with everything that is changing, if you are operating your data center where every person has to be hands on a box to fix something, you're doing it wrong. So we should be at a place where we're using building monitoring systems, we're using automation, lights out management for 90% of our issues. And if you're not operating your data center that way, good luck with GPUs. They fail far more often. You're going to have a huge amount of churn at sites. You can't afford to do this in a non-automated way. And I think when you actually take that step backwards to look at how you operate your data center with as little touch as possible, you open roads to everybody. Because to your point, a lot more of that work is technical work that can be done from home. Actually, you're probably creating less particulate matter in your sites. It's probably better for how your sites operate from an overall, heating, cooling, airflow point of view. So there's a lot of value in taking those steps back, identifying opportunities where you have smart hands contractors for a subset, a minimal capability flow, robotics even as you go into different domains, because again, if you're going to install a 40 megawatt pod that has a cable so large it could flip somebody's, pacemaker, you don't want people in that data center if you can avoid it. So I think we need to think differently, because what we're building towards is astronomical in terms of power, cooling, operational flow, and risk. Of course somebody can work from home. Of course somebody can work from a station outside of the room. How many times do you need to actually reroute a cable? If you're using an OCS system, it does it itself. That's the point of the mirrors. So we have a lot of opportunity to think less about feet on the street, people in the room, and a lot more about how we unlock the potential of everyone, because the compute trajectory we are on means we need every data center, we need it operating at maximum efficiency, and that is not going to be done by single humans plugging in boxes.
I think as well, if you reconfigure somebody's working hours so that whoever you are, you can take your kids to school or your pet to the vet, or there's nothing that says the vast majority of the work that any of us do has to be done between 9:01 and 4:59. It just doesn't. And actually, in a large number of corporate emails, a lot of people now have that signature that says, I work outside of normal hours. Please don't feel obliged. There's absolutely no reason why that can't apply in data centers to a large portion of the work. Not everything. And I think that's some of the mistake that we make as humans, is we make a broad statement, and what other people hear is you want to apply that statement to absolutely everything, and that's not the case. What we're saying is, on a moment-by-moment, person-by-person, site-by-site basis, depending on what's actually happening on the site that week, you might make a different decision. The point is you should be able to make a different decision.
Amen.
Great, thank you. And actually, a very nice transition into the next point, which is to talk about expertise, aside from representation. So, Suzanne, there hasn't probably been any single conference that I've been to, probably the same for yourself, that hasn't brought up this skills shortage in the industry. So when we're talking about encouraging a diverse group of people to build a skill set, how do we get there? into that skill set?
I think it's building on from what you were saying, Katrina, which is moving your culture as an organisation away from a command and control approach to one that's more empowered and enabled from within the teams, because it's the teams that can self-heal. The teams can come up with those innovative solutions to address like immediate resourcing problems. It might not be a maternity leave, it could be somebody who's having a hip replacement, some planned surgery or unplanned surgery. What you need is this ecosystem again of teams that can be flexible and work across all of the job roles that need to be performed in a very agile manner. So we'll look at that about IT deployments with agile methodologies and those agile squads. We apply the same within the data center sphere, because I see that as a continuum, because I'm here coming from the SI space from the IT operations side. I want my data centers to operate in exactly the same way that we're deploying the patches and the changes and the enhancements to those work products. So, that's where I would go.
This is pretty much, basically you're saying that the people could work outside of their typical work role, because they might be building expertise into something wider.
Absolutely, and that cross-training then gives more robust solutions, because in everything that I've done over the last 20-odd years of work, the issues, the big failures have always been when you've had very towered teams and you've got people that are very expert only in one area. The real magic comes when you cross-train and you look at that, and that's where real business value is driven.
And now with AI again, the interface between IT and services, it's inevitable, as probably people are already feeling that. Lizzie, I wanted to talk about what capabilities do you think people need to bring in order to be seen as credible voices in the industry, to build that credibility for themselves?
Well, just following on from those brilliant points, obviously skills and capability are important, but I think it's more to do with attitude. I'm surrounded by people daily just who have the most infectious attitude, and they have that resilience and that confidence. This industry, it is fast-paced 100% of the time. We're a 24-hour industry. We are going all the time. You need that belief system, that yes, can do attitude, put your hands up, be prepared to work outside of your comfort zone. That's where the growth happens. So there's a million different skill sets that you need, but I think it's more about your attitude that you have to have, that I have my place, I'm feeling empowered and advocating for yourself, really. You need a diverse, you solve more challenges when you have a diverse team of perspectives. You anticipate more. So just being, feeling proud of yourself, taking up space, feeling that you're worthy, having a supportive community around you, I think that's the capabilities that you need.
And feeling comfortable in your own skin, right? Because I think all of you mentioned...
Which isn't always easy, Sometimes it can feel very difficult to feel, I've got this. You can have those moments of self-doubt, but the ability to feel the fear and do it anyway shouldn't be underestimated.
I think most of you mentioned the word authenticity when we were doing our preps. And Eve, I think you were the one that started mentioning that sometimes people early in their careers, they feel that they have to pose in a different manner than what they actually are.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, let's ask the audience, shall we? Not that you can answer me, but I can't imagine anybody felt super confident when they started their career, whether they felt like they knew who they were, because I certainly didn't. And I've talked about this quite a lot, actually, of late on the podcast as well. So I didn't know who I was in my early 20s when I was in my career, and I mimicked the people around me. But what that did was, for me, it was a huge distraction from the learning of the job itself. It was a distraction from my own development. And to be quite honest, it was exhausting. It was probably in my 30s when I decided that, you know, I know myself a bit more. I've got some life experience. I'd been through therapy for grief and all different things, and I'd gotten to know myself and my values. And I turned to my values to guide who I wanted to be in work, but also to guide where I wanted to work and who I wanted to be around. And what happened to me then was I did find a real confidence, not an acted confidence, and I began to show up as myself, and then I could focus on my job, I could learn more, my career started developing, and I really started to enjoy myself because I was surrounded by the people that I wanted to be surrounded by, rather than the people that I felt like I had to impress. So I think as leaders, and what I try to do is allow my teams to turn up as themselves, to be able to challenge, and make safe environments. We're not all the same. We don't all dress the same. We don't speak the same, and we were not brought up the same. So how can we all look the same, feel the same, and act the same? We can't be clones of each other, and that would be a disaster. So yeah, that's my thoughts on authenticity and how we can enable people to be authentic.
Thank you. And Katrina, I know you also mentioned the word authenticity.
So similar to you, I didn't know myself very well at all in my 20s, but I did know I was a lot. A lot. So I got a lot of feedback to discuss my a lot. And I took all of that feedback really seriously. Part of my personality is I'm quite literal. And so somebody would say, you talk too quickly, and I would literally slow down. It wasn't real, I couldn't maintain it, and it just meant that a completely different version of me showed up every time I got feedback, and it was confusing for me, it was confusing for everyone, it was not good, it was a hot mess, it was not good.
Absolutely.
And it took me further into my career, much like you said, Eve, to figure out that actually what people want is they want you to have paid attention to yourself, and they want you to have made a choice. So if you get feedback around you talk too quickly, and you decide, actually, I think I like how I talk, what that feedback should do, really, is should help build your authenticity. So it means that when you come on stage and you think, I should probably slow down a bit in this moment, you've made an active choice because you've got some self-awareness. In an ideal world, that's what happens. But the confidence to do that seems to come much later in life, much later in your career, where you think, actually, possibly for me, actually, it was being a bit senior and saying, I'm too senior to get fired for saying or doing or being like this now, so I'm going to care a little bit less, and I'm probably not going to be so literal with the feedback. And, you know, I do now have the confidence to encourage my team to do that in a way that I didn't when I was younger. When I was younger, I wanted to give them the benefit of my advice like I had been given. And actually now I'm much more likely to say, no, go, do, explore, be you, and then come back when you've had a think about it.
Yeah, it's great when you have a boss that gives you the space, and then you can do the same to your
Let's not ask
teams.
them, though. Let's not ask them.
No, but I think the point about feedback, you didn't quite say this, but I want to say it. Feedback is just a signal.
Yeah.
It's a signal from the person who's providing it on what they think of you.
Yeah.
Only you know you. Only you know your heart. Only you can take an authentic approach to how you receive that feedback. But I think a lot of high performers take feedback very hard. It's my best performers are often the people who, when I give them critical feedback, shrink, and I can visibly see it happen. Yeah. And that's the exact opposite of what my intention was. And it's actually the people who are often not the best performers. When I give them critical feedback, it's like Teflon, baby. They hear nothing. So take it as a signal. Don't let it crush you. Probably nobody gave you critical feedback to crush you, to make you be an inauthentic, slow version of yourself. Nobody wants that out of Katrina.
Oh, it didn't work anyway.
Yeah, doesn't work. But embrace who you are and choose, like Lizzie said, to be resilient to, okay, somebody doesn't like that about me.
Yeah.
Got it.
I think the other thing to that is you don't find your tribe unless you're being yourself.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to find true friendships or allyships or good teams that you can work with internally. It's very hard to hang out with people if you don't really know who you are and you're not expressing that.
Yeah.
I think, but there's also I feel an obligation now when I'm seeing younger people in the work environment to try and give them the confidence at an earlier age so they don't have to have that 10, 15-year period of feeling lacking in confidence and lacking being their true self in there. So, I mean, I actively, really proactively go out in the organisation, particularly just younger people in there, and say, look, just be yourself. Go for it. Just let your personality and your exuberance come through, and just don't worry so much. Don't be so self-critical. I feel a real obligation to do that.
Yeah, and you have said that you have seen results of higher performing teams, problem solving being improved when people are their authentic selves.
Yeah, it's just magic. You know, you'll throw them in the room with a bit of chocolate and some coffee, and you've given them that, right, you're all perfectly valid to have this conversation, have this, just be yourselves and come up with something, and the magic just comes out. It's you feel very proud. You feel like a proud parent of your child who's just done something really well. It's really brilliant. And then that just perpetuates even further, because that group of people, when they do their next project, and it's always agile, so they're in another squad, they adopt that and it becomes viral. It's really, really fast.
Amazing. And I just wanted to bring it to the element of, well, we have seen that across our discussion as well. There is a degree of fatigue or resistance around diversity conversations. Some people think that the conversations are no longer needed because, yeah, you guys are up there. There's like 6 of you on the stage, right? So, Lizzie, do you think that we're making meaningful progress onto that front?
I think it's sort of a reframing. It's not a box-ticking exercise. We shouldn't be viewed as tokenistic. It's more about why do people want to be here? It's creating those safe environments for giving people the permission to be themselves, and it's speaking outside of our own industry. At the end of the day, we've mentioned it many times, there is a skills shortage. We have this huge opportunity in front of us to really be at the forefront of the 4th industrial revolution. We need to attract as many different mindsets and skills and people as we can. And I think it's not so much about, well, we're all women, we're talking from female perspectives, we're talking about getting more women. That's brilliant, of course, love women, it's fantastic. But and sorry to keep flogging my wares, but the whole reason behind the name Critical Careers is because this is critical national infrastructure. We are creating critical buildings that underpin every single facet of our modern lives. So whilst at the moment, we're focusing on female journeys, the fact that we're female is absolutely irrelevant. It's got nothing to do with our gender. It's to do with our perspective, our journeys, and that can be relatable for anybody. So yeah, I think, of course, there might be an area of fatigue, but we'll maybe stop focusing on the diversity bit and focus on the people bit, because it's people who are building the future of this industry, and we need a lot more people.
And so, in order to move away from the diversity-only conversations, Eve, what do you think? Do you think it's moving to the right direction of utilizing people across the width of the industry or the ecosystem into technical roles, strategic roles, wider roles?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think all these ladies have had points to underpin that we are moving in the right direction, and it's not all about diversity. We obviously have less women in the workforce. That's an obvious thing. So it's not necessarily about the women, but I think the sign of true success is when we're not surprised that a woman is leading the discussion. Yeah. And, there are very capable construction leaders that are female, engineers that are female, architects that are female, procurement leaders that are female. So I don't think we're there yet, and it's not only about diversity, because if you go back to the first point I made, is we need to bring more females into the industry as a whole, but we need more people in the industry as a whole. So of course they're outnumbered at the moment, but I think a sign of true success is when we are not surprised that women are leading those very specific subject matter expert discussions.
Great.
And sorry,
Rebecca, sorry.
Just to add on to that point, it's fantastic. I'm so privileged to be on this panel with these absolutely powerhouse women. It's so great. But why is this panel focusing on women in data centers? Why are we not talking about liquid? I mean, I wouldn't be on here if we were talking about liquid cooling. I absolutely couldn't talk about that. But why are we not on here to discuss, a more technical proposition, I suppose?
Sure, but you just made a point earlier about how important good publicity is for data centers as well, which is what you do, so we can get on with our build, right? Rebecca, what would a new norm look like in terms of not just on conference stages like this one, but in projects, in leadership, in decision making?
I like what Eve said around not being surprised. I can't tell you the difference. I remember the first time I came in to teach a technical session when I was working at Synopsys on how to write system Verilog assertions to improve the outcomes of your validation suite. And the gentleman who was there at the front of the room asked me if I would get him coffee. And I was like, oh, I'm here to teach the class, actually. There's coffee in the back. Feel free. That does not happen as much anymore. I view that as a sign of positive direction. I view the changes that I've seen with families and more men being involved in caring for their children, more men taking parental leave, not just women, as an incredible changing point for us as a community. I actually think where Europe has been far ahead of America has been having parental leave and having more equitable parental leave across genders, because it completely changes the stage at home. I don't know everyone's background here, but I know I would not be here if it weren't for the support of a very involved dad and husband. There's no way. There's no way. It's the only person who keeps things going. So when I think about how we shift as a norm, as an industry, it's that we don't act surprised. We believe every gender, every person is involved in raising our children, that it's our community coming together to have best outcomes for our society, and that we embrace the different perspectives in the room. The quiet person, the introverted person who doesn't always raise their voice probably has a reason for being there, and we facilitate them contributing. Every aspect of diversity needs to be embraced. One thing that is true about the US is that we tend to be very aggressive and very loud. It's very hard to be an introvert, but there's a ton of excellent engineers. And so one of the things I think about most often as an engineering leader to facilitate my teams is that quiet person who is there for a reason and making sure they contribute. That's just the mindset to shift to, is that we embrace people who don't always look or think like us so that we can all be better.
That's great. And actually, very nice point, because I would like to close with each of you sharing what do you think is the one shift that we need to see in the data center ecosystem over the next 12 months? Suzanne.
I'm not going to talk about it from a gender perspective. I'm going to talk about it from a business perspective. So from my business, I'm going to see a huge conversation around sovereignty and repatriation of workloads into domestic data centers. I run a large consulting group who are actively having those conversations with clients every day. I really think that we're going to see a repatriation and a whole conversation about hybrid and hybrid connectivity. I think that's the big trend.
Thank you. Lizzie?
similar perspective, energy pricing in the UK, it really needs to be addressed. It is so prohibitive in terms of attracting large-scale deployments, generative AI workloads. We are pricing ourselves out of the game, ultimately pricing ourselves out of job opportunities and GDP, and we are losing the race, and we are becoming an AI taker instead of an AI maker. So yeah, the government really needs to fundamentally focus on that issue.
Thank you. Katrina?
I've picked something super tactical in the detail, which is data centers work the best when there are processes. And I would really like to see a very distinct process within each organization of the how behind attracting, training, and retaining talent, full stop, any talent. So 2 years ago, I was on a panel and I was talking about how I didn't think at some of my previous employers, of not just data centers, but anyone, I didn't think there were many male managers who could have a conversation about periods. And the room just erupted with, oh, sweet Lord, she said periods. And I would really like that not to be a thing. So within the how, within the tactical level, I would like there to be an actual plan. How are we going to make space for people we're not used to seeing in that environment? And how are we going to train people to manage them effectively?
Thank you. And Rebecca, obviously you shared one, but do you have another?
I think for me, AI is changing everything in our industry, but we can't afford to forget that we were on a trend towards sustainability before everyone hashtag AI'd everything, and we need to stay on that trend for AI as well. The stranded capacity, the power, the lack of power is the wall we're going to hit next. And if we cannot solve power distribution, power utilization, and efficiency, AI will flop because we will run out of supply, we will not be able to get useful outcomes at reasonable cost structures. So to me, the efficiency conversation, efficient use of AI, efficient use of our data centers has to remain at the forefront, not because of sustainability, but because it is actually the efficiency that will allow us to recognize value out of this trend.
Thank you. And Eve?
So I was going to say one thing, and this always happens, and I'm going to move on to something totally different, but I will quickly close out. I'd like to see women on expert panels. So that would be the shift in how women are seen in the industry. So they're moving on from the people. What I think is something we all need to think about is how do we adopt AI into how we operate? And I think we need to see a huge shift there. We need to become more efficient. So we're always talking about the strain on our people. The capacity of people. We can't attract people. We need to be more efficient ourselves, and we need to go further. We need to be able to do more. So don't be scared of AI and the adoption of AI, because it will not replace our jobs. So let's get more literate in that space, because we're actually providing the infrastructure for it. So let's do more with AI over the next. Let's just see everyone adopt that.
Thank you. And just my one sentence, I would like to see, because we're designing data centers to not have single points of failure, but we forget people in the process. So I would like to see people treated as not a single point of failure in respect of what they offer in order for this industry to continue at that pace. So please give a round of applause for the amazing panel, and thank you all for listening.